Ladies and gentlemen, the time you've been waiting for, Storm Competitive Series is back here in Week 10 for the most impressive showing in all of T3. Have your minds blown. My partner in crime, Jay-Z, is joining me on the Sixes, Henry Ferme and Rigel in the background. My friend, welcome.
I am so excited to be here. Season 4 is going to close out with a bang the regular season. We only got a couple of matches left, but I know these are going to be fantastic matches. We're going to finish off these playoffs in style, and we just saw those intro videos. Season 5 around the corner. I could not be more excited, Chief.
I am so excited. I am nervous. My heart is pounding. And that hype video, I am just energetic. The ball of Chief Chaos is ready to start things off. Visionary, Redux Rising. We have heard some turmoil through the grapevines recently about these rosters, but before we can even talk about them, let's talk about where we're doing battle today.
Well, looks like we're going to be doing battle on Oregon and Villa. Oregon being Redux Rising, or X-Redux's map pick, and Villa will be the Visionaries map pick of choice. We see Consulate Clubhouse banned out early, Coastline and Theme Park and Cafe. The teams just doesn't want to have any business going to these maps. We're sending it straight ahead to a little part of that T3 special, the Oregon Villa Wombo combo. We're going to see both of these maps, and I think that these teams are going to give us an absolute show on both of these battlegrounds.
I'm a little bit concerned about Villa for Visionary. They seem to be a roster that struggles with these higher, macro plays maps where it's a higher level of thinking. It really forces them to have an IGL that's going to take control of a map. And Visionary doesn't have that. They've gone, like we said, through turmoil recently. They've lost a few players, and they don't have that central voice. And Villa tests central voices.
And speaking of those voices, at least the voices in our community have spoken in terms of who they think is going to emerge victorious after this one. It looks like, we do have generally favoring Redux Rising here, but if you look at our community poll, it seems that the community thinks that Visionary has the advantage tonight. I mean, of course, only a 10% margin there, but a margin favoring Visionary nonetheless. I mean, Chief, personally, I see that you predicted Redux Rising there in the predictions below, but, what are your thoughts, right now, exactly how this one's going to shake up?
It's impossible to tell simply because both these rosters have unknown entities. Visionary has transition players, like we were saying earlier. They don't even have a dedicated fifth yet. They still have a substitute in play. And the side of Redux Rising, they have 2 new players that they've been talking about bringing onto the roster. So that's 3 unknown entities in this lobby. That's impossible to predict. And unfortunately for our predictions, we showed that, 2 weeks ago before all this madness happened.
Well, we're going to take a look at our rosters and compare these 2 teams, and we can see, of course, we've got Tomato, the player on Visionary. We're going to have to keep an eye on, a player we have yet to see in SCS Season 4, coming in as a last-minute sub for Visionary here on the side of Redux. We take a look at this lineup. We're generally familiar with all of these players, but Shapai and Bowden are more recent additions to this roster, and some that we have really yet to see them come to their full fruition here in SCS. We're going to have to see a little bit more tonight exactly how they're going to pull through and what kind of role they're going to fit on their particular team. But, for the most part, I say Visionary, they have their core 4 part of this lineup, and I think they're going to be hoping that those 4 can really, put the team on their back in a sense and really help Tomato, get through the vine, you could say, and really get integrated into a team, which can be so hard to do.
So it looks like the proposed changes for Redux Rising hasn't actually gone through. They're tasing 2 phenomenal players from T3 that was kind of flirting at that T2 level, but they're not on this roster. They've elected to bring an OG that is Trix and Sheepai, the unknown entity. So I guess it's a 1v1 between unknown entities, Tomato and Sheepai. But looking at the statistics, you can see that, Redux Rising has had some phenomenal showing in certain series, and that's kind of inflated part of their overall ratio. But nonetheless, they have some phenomenal mechanical players, particularly Trix making his return.
Well, Chief, I would love to talk about Tricks and Panic on the side of Visionary, because these two players, you take a look at their entry and their entry ability and really how they make their presence felt really early in a round, and that is going to be a key focus, and something we are going to be paying attention to all night long is comparing how Panic is able to be that entry fragger for Visionary, and Tricks on the side of Redux is going to be that entry for them. And having this direct comparison between these two players and seeing exactly how things shake out, I think is going to be really good to see, and I think will be a good indicator of how the day is going to end overall. Of course, on paper, you just take a look at the ratings and you can see that Redux maybe have a little bit of that edge on the rating side as well. But if you have a player like Panic who really steps up and finds his groove and really gets into his element there, especially on a map like Oregon that can be so frag heavy at times, I think we could see Visionary step ahead in those moments.
Redux Rising is like a multi-tool. Part of their tool belt will have a knife on it, part of it have one of those scissors, and you can see their roles being all flex players. That is incredibly important. And we're talking about our map selection today, Oregon as well as Villa. Those two maps will test the team and how they're going to be changing not only mid-round, but throughout the entire series. So I'm eager to see what those will bring alone, because far too often do we see rosters that are just stuck in, I only play Thermite, I am only hard support, I can't do anything beyond that. It's refreshing to see a roster of pure flexes.
I absolutely agree, and I think having those flexes is just so valuable to any team. I mean, personally, a flex player is the most valuable player in my opinion, simply because they can fill any role and they can do it well for most of the time. I mean, you slap a fragger on a support role, and as long as they've got a brain, they know that they just have to take fewer gunfights. But if you've got that support role, not to mention they can really frag out when it comes down to the wire, like it often does with support players. I mean, that is an extremely valuable player to have, a versatile person, to have in your tool belt, like you said, Chief, and something that is going to be very key tonight. But we take a look at our standings and our teams, Redux Rising and Visionary. You see Redux at that number 5 spot, and you see Visionary number 7. And now this is Visionary's last match of the regular season. So to get a shot at getting in the coveted playoffs there, they have to get ahead of Emergence. A tie won't do it. They need 4 points here in this match, which means at least 1 decisive victory and then squeaking out a point or more in an overtime series or another map win. It's going to be tough to do against this Redux team, but something that they are going to need to do if they want a shot at the playoffs, Chief.
And in more recent news, in the past 48 hours, 2 more rosters have found themselves in the holiday break cluster. Synthetic has disbanded. They've picked up a new roster since then, the old DVX roster, but they won't be participating here in Season 4. And also, our French-Canadian team, Hostile Actions, has also found themselves in the DQ bucket. So it is basically a fight for 8th place. And as you're saying, Visionary is in a position where they can move up into 6th, but it's going to be almost impossible. And to start things off, they have to win today, guaranteeing themselves 6 points because they aren't playing in week 11.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to do because, I mean, you can see it on the scoreboard as well. Redux Rising, would generally be considered the favorites here, not only in terms of simply in the statistics, but in the standings as well, in the teams that they've played against, in the journey that they took to get to this point. And so Visionary have their work cut out for them, to say the least. They've got quite a battle ahead of them, and they are going to need to really put on a show here to get that 6 points that they need, or at the bare minimum 4, because Emergence still has 2 games to play. That's 2 games. That is 12 points that Emergence could theoretically come away with, especially when playing a team like 303 Esports, who's down there in 8th place. And so for Visionary to have success, to make it in the playoffs, they're going to need every single point they can eke out tonight.
And the last time Visionary stepped into the battlefield of Storm Competitive Series back in week 9, which was 4 weeks ago, they had a very rough outing. They went to their best map, which was Consulate. That was a 7-3, but then they took 303 to Clubhouse, and that was a 7-0. Now, sure, Visionary has a new player on their team, Tomato, but that must have shaken them up so much. They needed to have taken these past 4 weeks, understand what went wrong in that series, and start to break it down in an analytical manner. Far too often do T3 rosters not learn from their mistakes, and then they just go into the next play week saying, we analyzed the other team, we should be good enough. No, you need to analyze yourself first and then your opponents.
Well, you talk about this little holiday break that we've had, and I think this is something that's going to be really important for every T3 roster, because this is a time where either you can completely fall off and disappear into the darkness, or you can get a step up on your competition, right? Just one roster change is enough to completely shift a team dynamic. And we've seen in a large part of, this entire league, these rosters are shifting completely. We've had multiple players tossed, multiple players added, and that is a dramatic change for any roster to undergo, especially a roster that has been together for a while, that has solidified strats, solidified roles, and they are competing for, some of the highest prizes in T3. And so, coming here today, Visionary and Redux Rising, they both have had this break. They both, need to get things all coordinated, they need to get it all going, and they really need to see who is going to be more prepared coming off this break, who didn't let themselves, fall into that distance, really struggle to get that pressure going.
Well, enough theory crafting, my friend. Let's start talking about the game. Here in week 10, the party is now started here on Oregon. Visionary. We were talking about all their turmoil. Redux Rising, we've been talking about their turmoil. It doesn't matter anymore. It's about what these 10 players are able to bring on through. Deliberation being needed already by Redux Rising. Most likely still going to be a Thatcher followed by a Maverick for our primary attacker bans, but it is a new year, which may mean new bans, but looks like the 2020 bans are back.
I think with this Neon Dawn meta that's going to increasingly become prominent in the Siege competitive scene, of course, we are going to see a shift in bans like you said, Chief. But for now, it is Thatcher, the British brother himself, off the board early on. And the second ban is also no surprise. You called it perfectly. Maverick will not be a factor either.
Now, Kaid has seen a lot of love in the ban phase, not only on Oregon, but on different maps, but we actually might see some ANZ style strategies coming through today. That is the Clash ban. She's incredibly oppressive downstairs in the basement, but a competent roster can also bring her upstairs in the dorms. But speaking about utility meta, our penultimate meta, well, Melusi is now going to fall. She brings 3 of her disco devices, and if an attacker walks anywhere near them, it is just a party city. So the attackers, part of their checklist has now been removed.
Yeah, that utility consumption simulator, Melusi being such a prominent force in that meta, at least won't be coming into effect here tonight. And the Kaid ban, the Electro Clause, won't be coming into effect either. The Kaid ban considered mandatory at this point because, of course, you have the Thatcher and the Maverick gone. So those Kaid Electro Claws, unless you're going to bring a Kali, even then, it'll be almost impossible to deal with the full hard breach denial potential that a good Kaid player can really bring and can really affect any sort of team. But here we are getting into round number 1, our operator selections rolling through, and it looks like Basement will be the first site in play. But Chief, we talked about the ban phase, and one thing we didn't talk about yet is the lack of a Mira ban and the impact that that could make.
And that explains why we're going downstairs first. You're going to be putting a mirror over an E-box, and then your other mirror is kind of open to how you're going to be holding your bomb site. You can put one in the downstairs basement closet, or you can place the other one facing west all the way to freezer. Now, a lot of rosters has also been electing to do these big grandiose roams up in the meeting room area. And that is a great way to pay homage to the original version of Oregon, where all the Pro League teams, basically, they wanted to hold meeting as long as possible. It's the exact same idea of holding reading room on Cafe. The attackers have to clear the 3rd floor of the map, then clear the 1st floor, and then work their way downstairs into the basement. But it's going to be a more traditional style of defense for Redux Rising, as they're going to be putting the majority of their utility down in the basement, couple that with an extension into J Bunker.
Well, the J Bunker hold is one that teams will countless times try to continue to perfect and modify. But right now, Stoll is going for some crazy antics plays. You got a deployable shield outside of the J Bunker in construction, coupled with 3 holograms that the Alibi brings. I mean, we are seeing some crazy plays early on to start things off in style. Currently, 2 detected outside alerts going off for this attacking team, but that is merely a distraction at this point because all of those are simply those holograms that the Alibi can bring. And honestly, this is an interesting tactic. Just have an alarm constantly blaring in the face of this visionary attack, and maybe that will give Redux Rising the edge that they're looking for.
We've actually seen this strategy before on Coastline, where you throw them on the hookah balcony, but it doesn't matter if you're being pinged outside the entire time. You still have to be watching your flanks and be very conscious of where you're roaming, because if you're just walking haphazardly down staircases, there might be somebody on flank watch ready to gun you down. You can already tell that Visionary has a good understanding of the movement that the defenders could have through the map by pre-staging their set drones over by the default camera of T1.
Well, roughly going to reposition, and Badger are going to be looking to drone the teammates in as the push is going to start to unfold soon, just dealing with this utility slowly, and Mary Trixmas is going to be looking over here towards the Jimmy Buckets as they push on in this Freezer. Mary Trixmas, of course, that'll be Trix, that Jaeger player in this round, and Cosmic looks like they'll be repositioning the shield to possibly even make this J bunker hold stronger. I'm loving this Redux Rising attempt at least to reposition utility. It's so good to have at least a versatile setup where you can really change things up and confuse the attacking team as you go. But this Pillar's pressure is mounting, and Panic is going to drop right into the 416. A double kill for Trix to open things up in style.
A full send through E-Box was not the play for the attackers, as two of them are being sacrificed relatively quickly, but the soft support of Badger is able to get one. Here comes the banana push for Visionary. They just want to send in every possible gunfight. They've been better than the majority of them, and they're going to have control of round one. It's a 2+1 with 44 seconds left, but they're not prepared for Miracle over on the flank. He has control of J Bunker, but more importantly, he has control of the diffuser. It is going to be important for Visionary now to push together simultaneously. One from the west, one from the north. That's going to happen in perfect synchronization. Visionary starts us off in week 10 with a victory.
Well, Visionary doing exactly what they need to do. Take this fight to Redux very early on and come ahead with every single round that they could possibly find, especially on this attacking half. It's Oregon. It can often be so defensive-sided. So every single attacking round you can get is crucial to your success on this map. And this being Redux Rising's map pick, a victory for Visionary here would be just so important for them, would give them so much momentum going into their own map pick of Villa. But in round number one, we saw a brilliantly coordinated attack. We saw a multi-pronged attack, a little bit of pressure down in Freezer coupled with that E-Box drop and the tower stairs push, really eliminated that Pillar's pressure and methodically eliminated every defender that was put into their path. It looked like Trix might have been, the key savior for that round for Redux Rising, but 2 kills would be all that the 416 delivered for Redux. They were able to, they weren't able, rather, to stop the rest of the Visionary force that poured on through.
Now, while Visionary did a wonderful job in attack, I want to actually go back to Redux Rising. I think they did a better job on defense, even though they lost. The read they had in that round, and you were highlighting moving those deployable shields, most rosters aren't very comfortable doing that, and they also don't have the IQ to actually do that. They just feel the push coming from one direction, and they're like, we're going to put all of our utility here, we're going to stay here, and this is where I'm going to die. Where Redux Rising did the exact opposite. They want to be very fluid with their defense. The problem is, when you have fluidity, you also have to have perfect levels of aggression to match that. If the attackers are swinging for the fences, that means you swing at the exact same rate. But if you're too passive in your bomb site, the attackers are just going to set up and start to gun you on down. So Redux Rising makes one small adaptation to their level of aggression, and I think that round goes completely different. And their aggression levels will be changing as we move into map 2, or round 2, because they have Cosmic on that pulse downstairs in the basement, providing as much information to his team as possible.
Well, you can use that information in a couple of ways, Chief. You can use that information to take some pretty aggressive plays, knowing exactly where those attackers are positioned, or you can simply use it to guide your defense in that closing seconds when the 20-second push inevitably will come on through. And for roughly at least the Bandit, the aggression is going to be a very direct presence, already running over to small tower, hoping to find some late pressure on this team. But it's that early pressure from Cosmic, the pulse, that's actually going to find the kill, but Jimmy Buckets will get the refrag, dropping the pulse out of play, roughly on the flank, doing exactly what he needed to do there, delivering Jimmy Buckets to an early grave, and once again, Redux Rising are looking good at the start of their defense.
It seems like Visionary is finding themselves in the "oh no, why was he there" type scenarios. That is on you as an attacker. You always have to know where the defenders are, and you have to know when they're swinging. A first Kelly sniper bullet will miss, the second will follow it up. It seems like it's just discombobulation by both these rosters. They're trying to fill each other out, but they yet aren't vibing on the same wavelength. Everybody in this lobby needs to take a nice deep breath. There's still plenty of time for both of these rosters to be successful. But going back to my previous point, Visionary, they need to do a better job of clearing out the map. It is a huge oversight if they are being shot from behind by not droning out small tower, one of the most common positions to be in for, well, a late flank.
Well, Badger, it appears, is going to be doing that exact thing. A little bit of a map clear and now a white stairs push. And Tomato has now been left alone on the other side of the map here, tower stairs. Left with the diffuser and left with, well, I guess 60 HP and a dream here. They're trying to establish the crossfire onto this site, but that's not something easy to do, especially when all you have is either a gigantic sniper or a dinky SMG in your pocket. And Tricks and roughly an MP7 and a 416 to greet you. This is going to be a very tough push for this Visionary team. But Badger now has the game crossfire that they need. They could sneak on through, but the mirror window provides all the intel that Trix is going to need to swing on through. The combo with roughly will drop Tomato down to the grave, with Trix picking up the frag. Badger left all alone, going to search on through, but it's the C4 raining from above that will take out Badger and give Redux Rising their first round, keeping us even here at 1-1.
The attackers need to move together as a unit, even if you're on other sides of the map. If you're pushing at different times, you're never going to be successful. And if we look in that last 30 seconds push, it seemed like Nomad was pushing a half a second too soon before Badger. And that is going to be on those two players and or the IGL to call that last second push. And more importantly, decide who is looking where. The mirror window over at South Attic is going to be very oppressive. So you're either going to have to actively deal with that or try to set up a crossfire where you don't have to deal with that. And I would have liked to see Vision push either from big window and white stairs and try to do a more default plan over by the bunker's rack. However, they went for a 180 crossfire, partly from white stairs and partly from trophy. But again, they didn't swing as a unit and they died as individual.
I think that is a great point, and I do also want to talk about a little bit of that Redux Rising hold and the difference between round number 1 and number 2. Personally, I think they played the mirror windows a lot better in round number 2. Not specifically the placement of the windows, but the fact or the way that they played them during the round. In round number 1, we didn't actually see the mirror windows be all that effective to stall out the push, and that's exactly what they're there for. Not only to find some free kills, but provide a copious amount of information to any side of the site. And so going back down to the basement here and repositioning those mirror windows once again, I do think it's going to be very important for Redux to keep an eye at least through those mirror windows or play them effectively to not only gain the intel that they need, but to successfully stall out any push that will inevitably come from one direction or the other.
Did you see the security hatch? It is banded from above. I'm just rubbing my eyes to make sure I saw that correctly. Visionary is going to make another droning error. Even if they win this gunfight, it is showing that they're skipping steps. Rogley is able to rotate with just over 25 HP. But Visionary should have got this as a free kill. A huge oversight almost cost their player's life. But also Redux Riser was playing a little bit too hyper-aggressive. But I want to go back over to what on earth is going on security. You put a bandit battery on top of a top hatch. That doesn't make sense. Hello? Redux Rising, please.
Well, they're just trying to pull out all the stops, I guess, because of that last unsuccessful defensive round. They're like, you know what? The thing we need to change, the one thing, and it's only one, slap a bandit on that hatch from above. I mean, maybe it's not the best adaptation, but it is an adaptation nonetheless. And Panic now continuing that roam clear after they noticed Rogley playing in small tower. Rogley will now, having rotated back to site at least, will be positioned on that mirror window. But Panic knows exactly where Stoll is positioned. Here comes the nade, and it connects. A brilliant frag will deliver Stoll to their early grave, and already Visionary are looking good in round number 3.
You know you're having a bad day when you're a Jaeger and you die to a nade. You should never be dying to it. The guy who catches grenades should never be dying to it. But nonetheless, Visionary's gonna find themselves in a good position until I jinx him. Miracle's able to find one, and ill-advised Nitrocell is gonna go upstairs, but the cinder of that package will no longer be on this planet. Visionary has done a great job of having a full and utter YOLO level of aggression where they're pushing into the bomb sites. Redux Rising is unprepared. Cosmic is still putting down a deployable shield. He's shaking in his boots right now. He wants to fortify his position for as long as possible. The storm is going to calm down just slightly as Visionary sends their drones down range, locating where Redux Rising is and planning their final executes. But they won't plan enough if Panic is going to drop.
Well, the dropping of Panic is helpful, at least a little bit for Redux Rising, but this attack looks like it shows no signs of slowing down. Murray going to take a little bit of damage here as Rogley tries to play this sneaky play here in the closet. Might catch the Hibana off guard, as the Hibana now will swing the angle. That's Badger, but patiently waiting for something to come to fruition, but it's not for the Hibana. It will for Martyr, though, as Martyr picks up one. It's Rogley all that remains, and Martyr on a tear in round number 3 will give Visionary another clean round win.
So it's pretty apparent that Redux Rising's macro strategy is we're going to have a big grandiose roam, we're going to waste a minute to 90 seconds, and we're going to retreat. And hopefully we've killed enough members of Visionary and wasted enough time. However, on round 3, they accomplished neither one of their goals. They just walked themselves back into their bomb site, they locked the doors, and hoped that Visionary wouldn't set a blaze around them. And that was the big mistake. They left all the kindling available, and all Visionary needed to do was bring a lighter. A great read by Visionary, but I also have to be critical of Visionary. They're making far too many mistakes on their droning, and it's a miracle that they're not being punished for it.
Well, I would absolutely agree with you, and we got to talk a little bit. You mentioned the macro strategy, and I like what we're seeing from Redux overall. I really do think that they have a very smart approach to these basement defenses. They're repositioning utility. They're playing it very high IQ, but sometimes it seems that those high IQ plays, maybe they're getting tunnel vision a little bit. Maybe they're being too focused on that shifting of utility and that shifting of pressure on that basement site, and they're compromising on those core siege important, values at least. Not overextending on your roam, not overstaying your welcome, not over-aggressing when maybe it doesn't warrant it. Like, the Mira probably should not have been standing in the middle of Freezer when that security hatch was popped. I mean, that's not the best position, and it's unlikely that it's going to get much benefit for your team if that is some position that you're going to be playing on a regular basis. So maybe combine some of that macro strategy and apply it a little bit more directly to your, micro positioning and those approaches round to round, and maybe Redux Rising can find a little bit more success.
It seems like EJ has now jinxed the entire community because after he put on his show that, well, Frost isn't a viable operator, it seems like Frost is in every single possible ranked game, whether or not it's ranked T1 or T3. The Boss G is going to make it showing, the only gun with an ACOG at all on defense, and Skull is going to miss every single shot. That is a high-risk, high-reward weapon to bring. It can one-shot kill somebody, it can one-shot down somebody if it is basically chest and above, but it is so cumbersome to use, it is difficult to line up, and the recall is appalling. So, I'd like to see if he can get a kill with it, but it seems like Redux Rising is bringing out a ranked meme TM strategy.
Well, it's a strategy that it's going to land them on this tertiary bomb site, and that's going to land them in a position where this vertical hold is absolutely critical to the success on this meeting and kitchen hold. It's also the tower pressure from this attack that needs to be slowed down, and Stoll will not slow it down whatsoever. Panic using that R4C to deliver the vigil to his 6-foot fate. And now only 4 players remain on this defense. Miracle trying to counter the aggression from this attack with some aggression of his own. Swinging out on the Nomad will not bear its kills, as Miracle will now retreat and juice himself up with the stim pistol. So now Trix and Miracle remain downstairs, as Cosmic is the sole player trying to contest the attic push from this attack. It's going to be a key focus of this round, and it's going to have to continue to get going for this attack, especially as Cosmic finds the head of the Hibana.
Badger had every position to win that gunfight. He totally should have, but just bad crosshair placement has caught his life. And that is one of the important crossfires that Visionary needed to be successful. Visionary has to take North Attic, or they can just bully their way into meeting room and start to plant the bomb. I guess that's the contingency plan this round. Redux Rising has been caught off guard once again. Jimmy Buckets is popping off, and it's just a 1v3 as Jimmy Buckets kills his teammate. Roguely, the newest addition to X Redux Rising, is going to have to keep his team alive. He's going to have to find more kills, but he's just a little bit too patient, trying to jiggle peek his way into success. He will be successful, but now, will he find the other kill on Sophia? The prone angle. He's going to attempt to go for the W shift, ill-advised as he dies to it.
Well, Jimmy Buckets putting on quite a show in that round, and really the meeting push could not be slowed down from Visionary. I mean, an incredible call from the Visionary side of things to decide, you know what, there's not enough utility in our way. There's no players contesting this. We have some semblance of attic control. Why don't we just storm on through? And it seemed to work perfectly for them. The one thing I'm surprised about, Chief, is the fact that there was no pressure applied from that attic hatch from Redux. Usually, if you don't take attic control, a meeting push is all but impossible because you cannot remove the attic hatch player or the player playing on some soft destruction on that vertical angle. And so you're going to get cut down every time you try to rush into meeting. But that's not what happened at all. It was simply a brilliant send by Visionary, no counter from Redux, and a round that was very successful. I mean, it wasn't a flawless round, but it could have been so because Visionary played that very, very well.
So you're talking about attic pressure. So Frost gets a kill there on Badger, and then he rotates. So I think the reason he didn't want to play that hatch is he didn't want to overstay his welcome. He felt like he'd be re-pressured by the attackers of Visionary, and he felt like his life would be better used elsewhere, potentially on vertical holes over by kids' dorms or on a flank through the laundry. But again, I think your point still stands. He should have been better off standing his ground and attempting to lock down that position. And as soon as he got call of the rush, he could have played that hatch because most teams are going to full send like Visionary did. And I think that's just the motif for Redux Rising. They're making bad calls and bad communication, and it's catching their defenders out. I've gone on record and said this a plethora of times. You don't have a true central voice on defense. It's on all 5 players for IGL defense, but that still puts a lot of pressure on the entire team to make accurate calls.
Well, we're going to see how those calls can shift up. Maybe that coordination is going to improve, but something, like you said, Chief, clearly has to change. From the side of Visionary, their change, at least, is bringing a Finca, which is a unique change, to say the least. And from the side of Redux, they are opting to bring the Oryx. Cosmic will be on that extended roam with that Bull Rush ability, as Panic is now running straight on into the site. He's going to get shut down from below by his own teammate, and Mary Trixmas is going to find Martyr, and Stoll will take down Jimmy Buckets. An ill-advised rush attempt removed by the Buck player from below. Badger finds another, but so will Cosmic, and Badger, the team killer himself, is all that remains, and Roguely shuts it down. Redux Rising will happily take that very free round that Visionary just gifted to them.
Visionary needs to take a nice fat rip of their inhaler because that was a little bit too energetic. We've seen them do this before. When they feel very confident in their ability to push the bomb site, they will double, triple, and quadruple down on their macro strategy of rushing. They've brought out Finca shotguns before and have rushed successfully, particularly on Cafe. I believe that was when they were playing against 303 all those weeks ago. But they just need to tone things down. What makes Visionary rushes successful is they don't rush in the first 10 seconds. They do a kind of a late rush where they rush in the first 60 to 90 seconds after they've somewhat drawn out the map and, more importantly, got the opening kill. That opening kill forces the defense to challenge multiple angles and not be confident enough in challenging every single possible scenario. But if it's a 10-man lobby, the Finca rush on paper should never work unless the defense is caught completely napping.
Well, a rush, Chief, is also not helped if you kill your entry player.
True.
With a team kill, right? So That is the second time that Panic has been team killed. The first time it was in a post plant, it didn't matter at all. Visionary took the round anyway, but that time, it was a serious problem. Your Finka, who you have a shotgun equipped to just storm into sight and get some frags. I mean, that is exactly the chance that you have to catch Redux off guard, and killing that player by a team kill, definitely not the way you wanted to start. So that rush was simply over before it could even begin. And now, here in round number 6, Redux are going to hope to counter some of that aggressive play by extending this roam heavily. You've got Roguely in showers. You've got Cosmic the Cav in small tower. You've got the Vigil offsite as well in main lobby. And you've got another player lurking in T2. This is a heavy roam, and one that Redux Rising are going to hope that it's what helps them prevent any aggression from Visionary early on. The problem is, if you leave sight completely exposed like it is right now, Visionary could simply just send it on in and get a free win.
Well, this is definitely unique to say the least. That's an overused word in productions and cast, but this is something different for Redux Rising. Now, they've completely re-entered their bomb site. It looks like they were showing their entire hand that nobody was on site, and then they crashed back. This could work out well because Visionary might full send on through, but they have smelled there's something fishy in this lobby, and they're going to slow down their overall execute. Trades happening back and forth between these rosters. Visionary is going to be on the sharp end of that 6 as they're just a little bit more successful. Jimmy Buckets has been better in every possible way, but he's now been gunned down. Mary Tricksmith is the last remaining member over by the J bunker. His teammate's now going to be fall, and he's going to be the last remaining member, and the entire scheme of Redux Rising, attempting to go for some sprays, explosions raining around him. The Ash Breaching Charge will clean him up. Visionary wins round 6. A 4-2 split on attack is quite impressive for this banana game.
I think banana is the perfect way to put it, Chief. Unable to defend basement successfully at all. That's not something you usually say on an Oregon defensive half, but in the case of Visionary, their attacks were simply too good. I mean, I also think that last round is a little bit of an indicator about how seriously Redux Rising are taking this. It does not feel like this is the Redux Rising roster, the ex-Redux roster that we have known to love and really seen them come into their element here in SCS. They've looked so strong before and so coordinated, but right now something is just not there, and to compensate for that, they're kind of bringing out all the antics they could possibly can to try to catch Visionary off guard, and well, Chief, it's just not working right now.
And if I can pull a sentence from Pro, what the fire truck is going on? This is such a madness server, and I think everybody needs to go back to their drawing board. But you're also talking about this is a new season, which means new operators are available, and a new macro strategy. We could have seen Redux Rising trying to experiment with what's going on. Redux Rising more or less has guaranteed themselves a seat at the round table for the top 6 in Storm Competitive Series, and they could also be pulling an old INC where they don't want to show their entire macro strategies. They're going to try to keep that hidden for as long as possible, and it does make sense. You have some very competent coaches, IGLs, as well as support staff and analysts in this league. They are hungry and eager to find new juicy bits of information to create a counter strat on you in postseason. So if you do these crazy banana plays, the analysts won't have anything to work with, and that could give you the edge in postseason. However, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just, 10 players trying to have fun and see.
Well, I definitely think Redux Rising was trying to have fun in that previous round. We saw 3 players die in J bunker on ill-advised swings, which macro strategy is what it is. Whether you're hiding strats or not, the micro positioning or the decision making behind those swings, well, it clearly wasn't there. They are clearly having fun with this, but now on attack, they're trying to keep up the antics and send it right on into Freezer. This is pretty good progress already early on from Roguely here, but the shots will not connect on Jimmy Buckets rotating into the closet. So already Redux Rising are showing their hand here. They're showing some very early aggression combined with tricks working their way down this laundry stairs at the same time. But right now, Redux are continuing this pressure, and it's Visionary now elected to stall this out, now on their defensive half, holding down this basement site.
The problem with the stall strategy is the attackers know where everybody is. You're going to have to get aggressive and start swinging. Jimmy Buckets is going to be tasked with this as he can send his shotgun down range. He has to be careful that he doesn't overextend too much of his body. He'll be gun on down. And now it's Redux Rising turn to go for the jab cross, hook cross. And there is the bananasness in this lobby. Players back and forth being traded on out. But it seems like the defense is just better. They have held their ground. Cosmic able to get another one with an explosive device. Back and forth, missing every possible shot. It's potatoes in this lobby, but somehow Cosmic is able to win it. He has more bullets in his magazine, and now it's Rogley. And a 1v1 as Tomato is now down but not out, unable to be rezzed, and it's going to be Mono. We have Mono with 90 seconds left, or 60 seconds left.
Well, Martyr's gonna try to keep it spicy, maybe get aggressive here. Here comes the C4, will it connect? No, it's gonna be shot out. Here comes Rogley on the swing, but the shots do not connect and will have to back off. But now Martyr's position is known. Gonna go for another swing here, and it's ill-advised. Rogley finds the head, and Redux take a round that they had no business winning, but it will be in their belt nonetheless.
That was a 4-2 sub 90 seconds for the defenders. And the fact that they got far too aggressive is absurd. Again, going back, it is on the 5 players in the lobby to communicate amongst themselves, say, we have a +2 man advantage. Take a nice deep breath, take your hands off your keyboards and mouse, breathe, hands on keyboard and mouse now. Let's get back into the game. Because if you keep that aggression the entire time, you might start to overswing and the round could go away from you. We were talking about at the 92nd part of that round, Visionary needed to start to swing and take down some of the attackers. They did a great job of that, but then you have to move your aggression dial back to being passive because you've done your job. Far too often in T3, teams do not know how to be aggressive.
Yeah, the aggression simply wasn't applied properly from, I would argue, both of the teams in that last round, but it was Redux who, of course, emerged victorious, regardless of exactly how that went down. And now we're going back to the basement. Visionary are going to have another attempt at it. And once again, the Mira, a staple of this Oregon performance, especially because she is not banned. And that is exactly what Visionary will have to use properly to stall out another rush. It looked like the Mira play was the key force in what looked like Visionary were going to take a round win. But it would not be the case as, well, Redux found a way back despite the odds. And now bringing a Lion, continuing the banana play, Chief, like you mentioned, Redux is going to continue to keep it spicy, continue to keep it loose, and, well, they're going to be looking for more of that early aggression and some more surprising plays.
Actually, I don't necessarily consider a Lion a banana operator because you don't need to utilize him as a rush operator. He provides you information 100% of the time. If you're getting red pings, well, you obviously providing you information, but if you're not getting red pings, that is still information to the attackers. The defenders currently aren't moving. And if you couple that with a strong drone economy and a strong drone game, you locate a position, particularly like Ella over in Zulu, then you make the Lion call, and if you don't get red pings, you know she's only in about a 10-meter radius. So that could be a perfect scenario for the attackers to actually get aggressive on her, but they're not playing their utility to their best of their ability. And that just comes down to the coordination of the attacking IGLs.
Well, the first Lion scan goes out, but so does the M590. Jimmy Buckets finds the body of one, but can't finish it, and it's Trix who actually gets the kill onto the mute. An unfortunate circumstance there with the shotgun not finding the head, and so one player already lost. A 5v4 is what Visionary now face, but that's going to be traded back right away as Martyr finds the head of Stoll, the Vector proving its use, and now the mirror window position toward J Bunker will be helpful as well, but no, the E-box drop is too much. Mary Trixmas, that's Trix who gets the trade, but this is going back and forth so early on in this round. And now Cosmic snuck up here in Freezer. He's going to have to deal with the Jaeger. That's Badger, who is now going to be a problem here on this round. Badger goes for the swing with the red ping and finds the headshot. A double kill for Badger now. And now the E-box drop is once again a factor. Here comes Rogley on the swing with the Ash, looking for some action here, but it will not be found. And it's Miracle and Rogley, all that's left of this Redux attack, and they have to pull this one through in these last minute.
Who needs strategy when you can just win gunfights? But the problem with that is the attackers are on the back foot. They have the man disadvantage, and they're going to have to win every single gunfight. And with 45 seconds on the clock, they're going to have to start to push on in. There goes the push for Rogley. He's going to be gunned down by the FO12, and now it's on his teammate Miracle to save the day. He's going to have to pray to his lucky stars, but forced to retreat deeper into the blue bunker close by Jay. He doesn't have all the time to work with, and he's going to have to start to find kills, breaking them down one by one. But with bullets whizzing over his head, he's going to have to move now. You can't be wasting time. There goes the pre-fire. It's just going to confirm the location of him as he gets gunned down by the newest addition to Visionary.
Well, Visionary have their basement response that they needed. They played it more passively in those closing seconds. Sure, we did see some pretty aggressive swings from them. The push up laundry stairs and the swing and freezer come to mind there. But overall, they played it patient in those closing seconds, and they could not be felled in that 3v1 when Martyr only had about 5 HP to their name. Or that wasn't Martyr, rather. That was the ace. But overall, a good defense from Visionary, and one that they're going to be looking to continue its success and continue that momentum as they shift over to Dorms. Now, Dorms was very defensive sided on this first half. Redux found both of the victories on this site. The second one was really a free gift by Visionary, and one that Visionary are no longer going to be trying to gift to Redux here. Now, they are the ones elected to defend this site, to lock this one down, and Redux are the ones who are going to have to try to get this one going. But as you see by our graphic there, we've only seen one diffuser actually go down, and one diffuser will not go down, but be the victor for Visionary in that particular round, in round number 4. And we're really seeing a lot of this active play style, not a lot of early plants, just a lot of fragging from both of these teams.
So look at the setup that Visionary is currently utilizing. They're putting a lot of utility over into Attic and setting up rotations, which means somebody's going to be relegated to holding the east side of the map. It's going to be imperative that Redux Rising drones this out early and understands how to push this. We've seen this become one of the new defensive strategies, and I believe it was pioneered by G2. But the thing with this is the attackers can still run through their normal strides. They can open up North Attic. They won't be able to open up South Attic because the defenders made that a rotation. But it's going to be imperative that the attacker sets somebody up on the west big window. If at minimum, just open it up to have that threat level. There is a reason why it's barricaded, because the defenders want to have this as an avenue to work on through. However, it's just going to be meleeing this poor darn barricade for as long as possible, sitting down the Candelas and rushing on through. Panic with the triple kill. No rush to be seen as it's pure Visionary in the kill feed. Full mounts 1 and you can be successful. Stole's finding 1. He's going to have to find 4 more.
Well, that was a disaster, pure and simple. Another very, poor decision to go with that rush attempt. This time it was Redux who made that decision, and one that they are definitely regretting now. They're sitting at 5-3. It's about to be 6-3 as Jimmy Buckets will pick up the headshot onto Stole. And Visionary, they're looking clean, but that round was a gift. It was a holiday present. They said, you know what, we came back from this holiday break. Here's a little gift for you. You can take this free round, and now match point is what you have in front of you.
It's called the Defiance Special when you rush that window, but with that strategy, you have to smoke, flash, wait a second, and then push, because most defenders are going to panic, shake in their boots when they hear that utility drop. They're going to grip and rip their C4 and send all their utility down range. If you blind push the window, you're going to walk straight into that utility. And Redux Rising did exactly that. You have to be patient. It seems like we talk about levels of aggression and when to be aggressive. You just need to take a deep breath. I keep saying that, but it's incredibly important when you're a player. Breathe, think analytically. You can think fast-paced. You can play fast-paced. You have to know when, and both of these rosters have struggled to know when to just send it.
I think you're absolutely right, Chief, and I think that's something that, it comes with experience. It comes with a very experienced IGL who knows how to read a situation and, make a play as a result of, in terms of utility, from the defenders' positions. You combine that intel with a good decision, and really, you can have quite a bit of success in making those big brain plays or those crazy unexpected plays. They actually can work, and that's just not something that we're seeing on display so far, at least in map number 1. And I think, we can talk a little bit about map 2 and what we can expect, but we're going to save that for a bit later. But overall, I mean, Villa is definitely a more strat-oriented map than Oregon, right? So if you're considering, the kind of plays we've seen from both of these teams, and you've been considering how Visionary is looking a little bit more put together, this would definitely lean into their favor, possibly even for taking both of these maps. But our focus remains here on Oregon, and our focus remains on now what is match point for Visionary. They're sitting at 6-3, and they're once again forced to lock down a site, and this time it is the tertiary bomb site, arguably the tougher site to defend here.
I always disagree with this. I prefer this bomb site over its sister site and dining room simply because you can hold this bomb site through buffer rooms, and what makes its sister bomb site stronger is the use of showers and impacting away attacker hard breach utility. But in T3, teams don't really do a good job of that, so you may as well go meeting and just try to rely on your gunfight, since that's what dining room turns into anyways. And looking up from the attacker's setup, they're just going to be going for head clicks. They're attempting to open up the bottom part of attic. They've accomplished that in the top, but with a bad place Selma charge, it's going to cost them dearly.
Well, the second Selma now applied. It will be okay, and now a sprintable hole has been made, but a beautiful shot with the UMP will take the head of Trix, and Visionary, panic with another. That's a miracle to fall. Cosmic has the trade, but is it too little, too late? Here come Cosmic on the hunt. Tomato's the next to fall, yes. Badger has the answer, though, as Rogley's taken down, and another one will go on the scoreboard as Stoll will deliver Badger to his grave. A 2v2 now, but Stoll and Cosmic, they have ample utility to work with. They have ample drone at their fingertips as well, and so they could very well get a good attack going on this site if they apply that utility properly. Stoll not going to do that. Going to hit the floor. Jimmy Buckets delivering the ace to the down but not out stage, and here comes Cosmic, but Cosmic will walk into the SMG-11, and that is all that is wrote for Oregon. Visionary, they look strong in map 1.
Do they look strong, or is it just, well, people hitting heads and Visionary winning their gunfights? And I think we're going to see this entire series go down to who has more mechanical skill and who has been a roster for longer. And Visionary is one of these legacy teams. Sure, Abadu has departed the team recently, and they've changed out different players, but they still have more synergy. And sure, Redux Rising is also one of these legacy teams where they've had a lot of experience playing, but Trix departed the roster for a good couple of months. He is now back to play, but you can be best friends with an individual or not play with them for a while, and you still need to learn how you guys mesh together.
I think that's a great point. We're going to get a chance to actually take a look at our stats in just a few moments, but those are going to be compiled. And so until then, we're going to talk a little bit about, what we actually saw. And to me, Chief, I know you said that, maybe it was just came down to the gunfights, but honestly, I think if you look at both of these teams and you just put them up there and you say, which one played smarter Siege, which one played better Siege, I would argue that Visionary had it every time you could possibly, argue that point. I think Redux, they tried for the Hail Mary strategy, and sure, they won some gunfights, they popped some heads, but Visionary played it, I guess, a little bit more structured. Of course, there was structure that was lacking at times from both of these teams, but I think Visionary had a little bit more structure, they had a little bit more discipline. I think they were taking it a little bit more seriously, as there's a lot on the line for them. They need all the points they can get, and I think that the victor in map 1 is no surprise to me, just given the play styles, given the way it shook out, and going into Villa, I think that is a very strong indicator that Visionary may find success there as well. It is, of course, their map pick, Chief. I mean, they were strong here, and if they play that disciplined, mature, relatively mature style of Siege that we saw from them there compared to Redux, I think that is going to be very successful for them in map 2.
Those are great points, JZ, but also I want to talk about Redux Rising. Some of their defense, sure, they did things that are outside the box, but they had great levels of read. Let's talk about those deployable shields moving. If they felt Visionary would be pushing from one position, they picked their deployable shields up and placed them over on the Freezer side. And then they realized it was a split push, partly from Freezer, partly from J Bunker. So they picked up one of their other shields and put it back in J. And you can see that Visionary hit the brakes. They misshift after that. It took them about 30 seconds to stand back up and understand what was presented to them. Now, Visionary still won that round, and I have to give Visionary great props. It is very difficult to react when you're sub 30 seconds to an entirely different macro strategy. You as an IGL are breaking down mini games the entire course of a round to one final goal. It's usually to plant the bomb. But part of those checklists, you already know what's going to happen. You've been calling this round 40 seconds before it's happened, and now the round is going to completely change. You have to rely on your entries to win those gunfights because macro strategy is out.
I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, when it looks like this, when a game shakes out in the way it did, it's micro positioning and gunfights. It really, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Of course, this is a strat game, and your strategy that you bring, your macro strategy, is so important. But at the end of the day, when you're in a gunfight, when you're in a 1v1, it is your micro positioning and your gun skill that makes you shine compared to your opponents. And at least in map 1, Visionary did that. Both of these teams, they had their moments. They had their moments of glory. You mentioned the repositioning of the deployable shield. Visionary had some pretty good patience at those end of those rounds, and then they both had their moments of not so glory. We had a couple of ill-advised rush attempts from Visionary, some ill-advised rush attempts from Redux, and that is why, you know, we saw some of those mishaps, and that's why we saw it shake out in the way that they did. We saw Cav, Frost, we saw a Boss G, we saw a lot of weird things in map 1, and I'm excited to see in map 2 if we see some of that similar playstyle.
Now let's go back to the two blunders of a rush. The biggest ones that stuck in my head were both on Dorm's defense. Both rosters elect to do a big window execute. It's not like they're reading and filling out, oh, you know, there's some defenders over on the east side of the map, let's just rush. It seems like their entire objective was to rush early on. And like I said during that round, you have to do some type of homework before you rush, whether or not it's getting an opening kill, setting up a preset drone, or at bare minimum, sending utility downrange. That is going to be sending all of your flashbangs downrange, all of your candelas downrange, all of your smokes downrange, waiting for the defenders to then throw their utility and the kitchen sink back out at you, and then push you.
I think that's a great point. That's something that we didn't see from these rushes, and that is simply why they were so unsuccessful. The one thing that Visionary did do that I don't think Redux did was position a player below, which actually ended up being a serious problem as the Buck killed the Finka on the entry rush. But like getting that early step was definitely a good, you know, progress at least for Visionary. But the stats are here. We're gonna get a chance to look at exactly how things shook out. We highlighted Tricks and Panic and the comparison between those two players and exactly how that would be a factor, and I think it very well was. I mean, Panic, you see with a rating of 1.45 in that particular round, doing pretty well in the KD overall as well. The entries though, that is what we talked about, and that is where Panic excelled. Tricks did as well, you know, compared to the rest of the team on those entries, but it was Panic who shined above on the entries, and it was Visionary who ended up on top. Coincidence, Chief?
I mean, you know, stats never lie. If you have a higher rating, you tend to win more games, so I don't think it's a coincidence at all. But I want to highlight Mr. Slug, the tomato slug. He doesn't have the greatest rating, but he is credited Panic kills, Martyr kills, Trick, and Badger kills. If he wasn't relegated to flank watch and secondary droning, his four teammates would not have been successful. Sure, I was critical of Visionary and some of their drone executes, but he has a lot of credit to give. And sometimes stat lines don't tell the entire story. Sure, Panic has this great flashy rating, but his rating wouldn't be high if it wasn't for Tomato stuck in spawn, driving his drone around the map. And also, Stoll had a very rough start to the half. He was the one bringing those Boss G ACOGs, and I like him, you know, doing something different. Great. Throwing the pace of a round off is phenomenal, but it wasn't the answer to the Redux Rising prayer.
A fair point, and one that we're going to have to see play out in map 2. Chief and I are going to take a quick sip of water, but we're going to be right back, so don't go anywhere. We've got map 2 Villa coming right up. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Map 1 was crazy, and we are here for another crazy Map 2. Once again, my name is Jays Wills, and I am joined by the man himself. Chief is here alongside me. Chief, what do you think we're going to see in Map 2?
Finka shotgun rushes. I would be perplexed if I didn't see that. Normally, those words would never come out of my mouth, but in map 1, we saw it. We've seen it before from Visionary, and if the pattern continues to repeat itself, we could see it in map 2, which would be Villa. Like I was saying earlier, though, I think this favors Redux Rising. They seem to be a team that is able to read their opponent just a little bit better. Now, sure, Redux Rising ended up losing that first map 7-3, but I think they have a better understanding, but their mechanical skill is just a little jittery today.
That's a fair point. I don't know how I feel about that though. I think
That's a hot
Visionary.
take, huh?
I mean, in map 1, Visionary looked more put together to me at least as a team. Of course, Redux, were reading their opponent better theoretically. They had, they repositioned their shields. They were like really doing some big brain stuff. But what I didn't see from them was that actually working, right? If
Fair.
Visionary do the same stuff that they did in map 1 and they do it again on Villa, that's very good for them. And as we see here, this is exactly what they need to like push on forward and get their way into the playoffs.
And so just getting a word from production, our standings have now been updated. So Visionary and Emergence are now tied. The thing is, Visionary has played one more map than their opponents of Visionary, but both rosters will be hitting, I believe, 20 maps at the end of 11 weeks. And technically for Visionary, this is their final week since they've played in other weeks due to forfeits in air quotes. So it is imperative that Visionary wins 3 points here on Villa. Will find themselves moving into 6th place where they want to be, but their opponents of Emergence will still have the option of playing in more series in the future.
Right, and if Emergence just gets a point or two, I mean, that is simply enough to put them over the edge. If Visionary doesn't get those 3 points, like you said, Chief, that they desperately need here on Villa if they want that opportunity. And of course, Villa is their map pick. This is where they wanted to end up here today. They're prepared to go head to head with Redux on this map. And so you have to consider that and their performance on map 1, the fact that they have the momentum firmly in their grasp. I would consider they have the advantage here, but you said you favor Redux here, so we're gonna have to see exactly how it plays out. But I think regardless of what we think, I think both of the teams, they had their moments where they looked really strong. They had their moments where if they do a little bit more of that, a little bit more often, we're gonna see them find a lot of success here on Villa, and it's going to be a great map.
So JC, it's no secret that we have a brand new stream package today, and part of that stream package is caster predictions. We'll actually rate how accurate casters are. And I was bragging that I was the most accurate caster at the end of week 9. I was only wrong 4 times across the entire time, at least if my 3 brain cells remember things correctly. But so far, going back over to caster predictions, it looks like a lot of us who picked Redux Rising are wrong, and CDAPS is in a great position with that tie call. So we'll have to see how the cookie crumbles today.
Yeah, we will. I mean, I didn't get my prediction in there, but I think I would have tossed it to Visionary. I think I might have, because they have more to play for. But
True.
hindsight 2020, of course I would say that now. But listen, Visionary have a lot to play for here. They are trying to climb their way in the playoffs. And Redux, you mentioned it before, they're pretty much locked on in. So as long as Redux, something miraculous doesn't happen and they don't DQ for some reason, they have got this spot, and they are really just kind of hanging out here with Visionary because they don't need this game whether it goes either way. And having either that 5th or 6th seed, it's going to look very the same in terms of you've got to play in quarters, you've got to play 2 games, and you're going to be playing a tough opponent no matter how it shakes out.
Now, if we return back over to week 0, Visionary was a Cinderella story for qualifiers. They put a team together in the first 48 hours before qualifiers happened. They didn't have a dedicated roster, and Jason, the manager and org owner, was forced to play for the team, and Visionary was still able to qualify. The problem is, ever since then, over the past 9 weeks plus the 3 weeks holiday, Visionary has been struggling to keep a constant roster. They pulled Pixel for a bit, then Synthetic sniped him away. They've pulled so many strong players. They put Jimmy Buckets on the roster. they need to sit down and decide who they want to be on the roster and what their goals are going forward for postseason. And if postseason isn't an option for them, what about season 5?
Right, they're going to have to see how they can shake out in Season 5 as well, and we're going to have the quals coming up in February, so be sure to sign up for those. It's going to be hype. But you talked about the holiday break, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but I do think it is really important to what we're seeing here today, because the holiday break is an opportunity for teams that are a little bit behind or a little bit lacking in skill level and strat book depth compared to some of those top teams. That is when they have a chance to catch up. They bridge that gap by grinding it out, by sweating over the break, when a team like those top boys like Lycus or Wichita Wolves, maybe they're not grinding out and sweating for strats because they don't have as much at stake. They don't need to take away from their holiday to grind some seed strats because they don't have a lot to play for, at least in the closing weeks. And so they're going to use this last weeks of the regular season not to grind out the regular season, but to prepare for the playoffs. And Visionary, they haven't been prepping for the playoffs. They've been prepping for this match. They've been prepping for Redux because this is the last chance that they have to get points. So if we're talking simply preparedness, I'd say Visionary excel in that category.
What concerns me about that, though, is I have some scrim reports, well, lack of scrim reports, that a lot of teams didn't scrim during the holiday break. So we'll have to see how that actually pans out here in week 10. But let's dive over and actually look at the operator pick rates. And we've seen a lot of turmoil here. Most people say, you know what, I like me some Ashe, and they prioritize Ashe. But Zofia has received a lot more love by 10%, and also no bans.
Yeah, you don't really want to ban the Zofia because she is such an essential force to any attacker, any attacking unit. You have so much utility at your fingertips, and Ashe as well. Just so much opportunity to remove those deployable shields, the wubs that the Melusi can bring. So much of that can be on the shoulders of a Zofia or an Ashe, and obviously that is exactly why the pick rate is just so high. Ace as well, that notable third hard breacher that's been brought to the table. You have, that 59% pick rate and a good bit of ban rate as well, but generally considered, not that worth a ban on a particular map just because it doesn't shake up the way the map plays out all that much. Whereas a Thatcher or a Maverick really shifts it, at least on the attacker side of the bans.
What I found unique, though, is Thatcher's been banned 88% of the time, but when he's available, he's only played 44% of the time. What gives? If he's so darn oppressive and he's making you ban him 88% of the time, hello, why aren't you playing him? He's so good, according to you guys. These 88% of their bans do. But enough chief ranting. Let's actually start map 2 here on Villa. And the Bane of Rainbow Six Siege, Mr. Thatcher, who we were just talking about, most likely going to be the primary ban as Redux Rising starts on defense.
Yeah, the defensive half on Villa here. I mean, Chief, you and I have talked about the Villa and the attacker sided nature, the defensive sided nature of it so many times, and the way that that's changing in this new meta. And I think we're going to get a glimpse of that here tonight, but we're not going to see it all shake out the way that these two teams have at least presented their play styles in map 1. But so far, I would say that the defensive team, they've definitely got an advantage starting out here. They definitely can set the momentum and get things going right if they can lock things down. But you've mentioned it to me before, Chief, how important those attacks can be and how strong they can be, especially when attacking planes and games. But without the Selmas that Ace brings to the table, it's going to be a bit harder to get those AVG attacks going well. Your Vault Wall and your Study Wall are going to be a bit harder to get open as quickly as you would want.
And Hibana used to be the default attacker ban, but since Ace basically is a Hibana on steroids, makes total sense. And the Pseudo Echo, Valkyrie, great for Planet Denial, but more importantly, and given how these two teams are currently playing in this best of 2 series, Valkyrie provides a plethora of information. She allows you to send nitro cells downrange, and if you're playing like an absolute monkey, if you have information, the attackers will never find the kills because you're going to be flying out a window or flying around a corner. And K, to wrap up the final bans, invulnerable Kaids are incredibly oppressive, both on planes and games, as well as the sister bomb site over in Trophy. So it's going to be on bandits and mutes to defend those hard walls.
We're definitely going to probably going to see a good bit of play from Bandit and that Mute, just because that hard breach denial is just so valuable on all of these sites, but particularly on planes and games. And when you go downstairs to kitchen and dining, but at least in round number 1, it is completely absent. This defensive team is absent of that hard breach denial. Trix is opting for the Rook instead, and we may see a 6 pick come out here, but right now, this roster seems like it is a frag heavy one, and one that is going to just simply try to frag out this team rather than deny their breaching opportunities.
We've seen, as you said, Buck before, and I think that just might be a comfort pick for Badger. He has been able to frag on that operator before, and if you want to have your macro strategy be clicking head, when you put your primary and secondary and flex operators on operators and units that they're comfortable playing. And look at the staged drones by Visionary. 2 downstairs, 1 over by the East Main Breach, 1 over by Art. This means that Visionary is going to be sitting that Buck underneath to remove the utility and hopefully dish out a lot of damage to Redux Rising, currently playing in their AVG bomb site. And also, it looks like Visionary might be doing a push from the north side like most attacking rosters do.
Well, you mentioned the Buck from below, and I love that strategy. It can be hit or miss sometimes, though, because it can be so dangerous to be lurking down there very early on in a round, because the roam presence on this map is oppressive and powerful, to say the least. And with all those buffer rooms downstairs, with so many opportunities for a cheeky Jaeger or a cheeky Malusi to be hiding out when you're not expecting it, that can be very tough for a player like Badger here to be simply looking straight up and not paying attention to the flank. The risk is you'll spend too much time and too much attacking resources going for that vertical play, and that's why we will see some teams bring out that strategy and others reject it. Trix will start things off, though, picking up the Ash. Panic hits the floor, but Jimmy Buckets has the refrag, and that is the Rook off the table as well.
You can see the pre-stage drones working out perfectly for Visionary. Drones are great for information, but at the end of the day, you do have to just click heads. Information will not be enough to be successful, as members of Visionary just attempt to swing in every possible door frame, and they're going to lose in the majority of those engagements. Only 2 of them remain, and we haven't even gone sub 90 seconds. Now only 1 member of Visionary is alive, and he's now been removed from this lobby. Redux Rising is looking spicy here on Villa. Burt Turkey, an old member of Redux Rising, called it early. Oh, that's dirty. Oh, that wasn't kind, Stall. Wow.
Oh, man. Well, round number 1, very, very handily in the favor of Redux Rising, and they, or X Redux, and they are looking like they want to kick things off in style, I guess. They want to start it off big, really making no mistakes. They're simply just stopping the push at all possible chances. A team ace delivered, everybody picking up 1 kill of their own, and Trix, the only player to find the grave, at least on that Redux side of the coin. And in round number 1, you got to look at Visionary's attack strategy there and put a big old question mark right next to it, because there wasn't much of one. It was simply feed kills to Redux 1 at a time by pushing up the main stairs and hope that the Buck from below can find some picks while that's all going down. And that is not what happened whatsoever. The Buck never got in position to make the vertical holes until every single player had been killed at that point. And I mentioned it pre-round, the hit or miss nature of that particular play. And well, I think it definitely missed that time, Chief.
2 big Frenchy boys are going to find presence in round number 2. Rook and Doc are here to say hello. And this is, again, screaming that Redux Rising wants to play very aggressive. You couple that with the FO12 shotgun over by Walk-in Closet, which is by Master Bedroom, and it looks like Redux Rising is actually setting this up properly. Far too often do I see T3 teams just say, hey, look, we saw a Pro League roster run this exact same setup, so we should run it too, without understanding how the strategy should be set up. You always make a rotation in the middle 3 of those panels, reinforce the northmost panel, the southmost panel. That way you can have a person playing over in Master Bathroom to wide swing and help protect Stoll, the FO12 wielding Ella.
Well, that Ella is in play once again, and the shotgun, which was pretty effective, at least in round number 1, and in map number 1 will come into effect once again, as will this roam clear that Panic is attempting to assist by holding this boar window, locking off the rotations from that Aviator side, but the majority of your defenders are locked up on this site, comfortably waiting for this push to inevitably come on through. Mouse, the Doc, is going to be hanging out on top of the bomb chassis in Trophy, also waiting for any attackers to peek their heads around the corner. But with this south side clear now roughly completed, or at least underway with Badger on the IQ, now the attacker's job is to get their pressure up through landing, rotate a player possibly around to those master windows to apply the pressure from there, and then get that statuary take going.
The thing with that rotation is you have to do it in the beginning of the round to deal with the ADSs. Now, if there are Wamais in play, which there aren't, you have to make that rotation even sooner. But as you're highlighting, Visionary is electing to go for this linear take, and it's costing them bodies. The problem is you have no crossfires. Your entire roster is looking in one direction, and they're all going to die together. If that is your macro strategy to have attackers be buried together, then Visionary is succeeding. But they need to start to do something different, and maybe that's yeeting somebody out zombie window over into the Astros or Star window to at least set up some type of crossfire. But Stoll is going to get a little bit too aggressive with his pistol, unable to even pull the trigger as he's now gunned down. The rotation from Visionary will not be into a window, it'll be to underneath, utilize vertical destruction with the Ash breaching launchers. And here comes a flank from Miracle. Nobody on Visionary is prepared.
Nope, Badger had no idea the Jaeger was sneaking on around 90, and now Panic is going to have to recover from that somehow, but with only 2 of these attackers remaining and Tomato in no position to help out the Ash, this is not going well. Here comes Rogley on the swing. It's not going to bear its fruit, but Rogley is very happy to hang out here in Closet. A deployable shield, multiple ADSs, very tough for Tomato all alone to pressure this out. No air jabs remain, so you can't toss the Melusi across the room. You simply have to just toss flashbangs in and spray and pray. Here comes Tomato going pro, now sneaking through, but the C4 will deliver Tomato to the grave, and Panic won't find anything either. Trix will find the headshot with that 2x scope, and it will be all over for Visionary in round number 2. Redux looking good here so far here on Villa. Chief, looks like you were spot on with your prediction.
I mean, Visionary is just not communicating. They're not talking amongst themselves, and they're not creating a macro strategy. But more importantly, their micro strategy is non-existent. They aren't dealing with mini games. They aren't even identifying mini games. They're just trying to push. They're trying to win gunfights from one angle. But when you have your entire team on the south side of the map looking in one direction, of course somebody with a 2x sight or a 1.5x sight is going to slam you from outside in the grapes. You're not going to win that unless you just sprint on through. But sure, Visionary had success with that in the first map, but the likelihood of it repeating on a different map is so low, and that motif is just panning out. Visionary needs to change up how they're pushing, and round 3 is a good start. They need to take control of Master Bedroom with preset drones, clear out that second floor, then preset, and then start to remove the ceiling away from the defenders. If they aren't capable of walking through those steps, Visionary is going to find themselves in rocky fashion because, again, this map has been attacker-sided in recent memory, both in EUL and NAL Stage 2. And was that Cav hiding in the bathroom? Can Ruquick please go back up there? It seems like Redux Rising wants to bring out madness once again.
Yeah, the madness is back in play. You've got Rogley, the alibi, a viable operator in the right situation and with the right utility. The impacts instead of the deployable shield here, and we're gonna have Stoll hiding away in the bathtub. An interesting play, one that can often work very successfully, but you have to pray for a catastrophic droning mistake from Visionary, one that they aren't typically making, at least so far here on Villa. The mistake that they made in that last round wasn't in terms of info, it was more in terms of simply their micro positioning, more so the macro strategy of that round. They didn't establish any crossfires. All 5 attackers bunched up in landing, and they all just fell to their graves one by one. That's not a viable strategy here, but this one is. You have to establish the vertical play first, and Miracle's gonna deliver Panic to the grave, an early pick to start things off, and Tomato, desperately searching for the refrag, will net 0. And now, with one player in the grave, they have ground to make up once again. Despite this vertical control, you lost your sledge. You lost your Swiss cheese maker, the man to destroy the floor below you. And something of note here, Chief, Stoll is still in the bathtub and is still completely unnoticed.
If Stoll gets a kill this round, I'm literally gonna ult F4 out of life. Like, he should not find any impact, but Visionary has a drone. Their first player, Panic, you're highlighting, was killed early on because he did drone. Martyr's gonna go for the rush from behind. There is the shotgun. Everybody on Visionary is gonna be alerted that something fishy's happening. But Redux Rising is a great macro strategy. They've been prepared for this. A swing up the stairs of Astro is gonna be perfect time for Vigil. It's a cluster in this round. Redux Rising 3 in a row off a unique, perplexing strategy as Visionary hits a wall.
Well, the Cav bathtub play worked brilliantly. There isn't any other way to say it but that. The Cav not only found one great pick, but called out, he said, Vigil, get your butt up the stairs. We've got 3 free kills waiting for us. They got the kills. They delivered them, and they delivered Redux Rising another round win, sitting at 3-0, the clean sweep. And now heading into round number 4, Visionary, once again, it looked like it just wasn't all working for them. The communication wasn't there, the coordination wasn't there, and it appeared that the drone work wasn't there either.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around round 3. I'm discombobulated and perplexed. And I said it Alt F4, but apparently I can't Alt F4 out of the program we're using, so I guess my threat was purely a lie. So sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. But Redux Rising is now going to their first bomb site, which is Plains and Games. And Visionary has at least seen this map or this bomb site once before, so that is an asset to the team that they can use. They can understand how it was played and break it down. They were far too aggressive. They wanted to push study in a linear manner. We've seen a lot of teams, both at the professional level as well as in T3, be successful with linear takes instead of doing the true traditional roam clear from the north. However, it still requires the attackers to put pressure either on the zombie window and or in 90 window, and you have to bait the defenders into getting aggressive, which Visionary was successful in. However, they just lost their ones.
That was what characterized round number 3, and now in round number 4, Visionary are going to have to make those changes. And I talk about this almost every time I get on the desk, but it's all about adaptability. The ability of a team to pivot mid-round, between rounds, and make the necessary changes to really get the better of an opposing team is absolutely crucial and really separates the good teams from the better teams from the absolute best teams out there. Because the best teams can look at a strategy that they are presented with and they can counter it directly. And Stoll gonna try to counter this vertical play, but Panic will shut that down. The headshot delivered with the R4C and only 50 HP lost for the Ashes Troubles.
That's a great start to Visionary. You removed Stoll, who's been phenomenal in this series, but you also removed Elysian, who gets better and better with time. He has more of his mines. I think he has 7 once it's all said and done. But casualties mounting between these both with these rosters as Badger is now going to be fall. But here comes the full send from Visionary. Redux Rising is looking in the wrong direction. Rogley is going to fall, and Mouse is going to be forced to flank up the Astro stairs. There are no flank jabs, no air jabs and flank drones to be seen. But he's put his teammate Miracle on an island. He's going to have to start to move quickly, but not quick enough as we move into a post plant, which won't matter as Visionary finds their first round victory.
Well, it wasn't a perfect round from Visionary, but it was a far and above what we saw from them on the first time they attempted to attack AVG. The last time it was a main stairs push that was simply just gunned down at every turn, and this time it was your more traditional north to south clear, work your way in from the trophy statuary side, get your way up to landing, and then pressure onto 90 and onto vault. That's exactly what was done there. The Maverick found a couple of kills peeking on through, a couple couple of free kills, the back was turned to the player pushing in from that red door into Aviator, and really that surprise style of play there, it really worked out well. Visionary found that round simply by outplaying Redux in a couple of those key moments, and despite the flank and the air jab not catching out the Mozzie, there was a drone. The dead player did call it out, and everybody was ready to converge on both of the players who were slightly extended off of that site.
Another extension back over into the walk-in closet, and Redux Rising really likes to utilize as many of these buffer rooms as possible, which has been the bane of Visionary for the majority of these rounds. But again, I think Visionary's ability to win is based off their mechanical skill, not off their macro strategy, because constantly they're making mistakes with drones and just getting miraculous W's as a result. But hopefully they've read into how Redux Rising wants to hold trophy this time. And if I was Visionary, I would put some assets over here on the master windows and at least destroy the north-facing window of the bathroom and destroy walk-in closet. That is going to force Redux Rising to put their barrels on those two windows to at least try to waste as much time as possible to prevent a rush from Visionary. And Visionary can do a more traditional execute walking all the way from the south. You have to try to mix something up, but Visionary is going to mix it up by entering in through mud.
Yeah, Panic is once again trying to be that entry player, the key factor in this round, but at least in those first few rounds was unable to do so. Tomato will be on the Zofia rather than on that supporting role of the Nomad. The Nomad now over in the hands of Jimmy Buckets. But here comes Trix, working their way up the back stairs, and this could be quite dangerous for both Panic and Tomato, who are trying to play some vertical from below this site. Panic is focused on those stairs, however, and here comes Tomato as well, who's going to be joined by Badger, the IQ, who's looking up through that floor, hopefully taking out some of that utility. Now, Panic knows there is a Vigil lurking nearby, but Trix has actually skirted that site and actually avoided the Panic for now, but Martyr will not avoid the M590 straight to the chest, and the Thermite is gone early.
Badger just saw a Vigil through his sensor on his wrist, so he knows he's over on the Astra's window, and he can't rotate without dying. He's stuck on the window above because his teammate is there, and a great execute by Visionary. I was critical of them for not utilizing their drones and their utility. However, the adjustments have been made in round 5. They have taken control of the buffer rooms. They've dealt with the pressure there. And now Redux Rising is going to find themselves on the back foot with only 2 of their men and women alive, and one of them back in the darn bathtub. If Visionary dies to a bathtub player, I will actually alt F4 this time.
Well, here comes the bathtub player. That's Mouse who's going to swing out with the SMG-11, find one. Now, Rogley and Mouse are both here in Master. It's a dangerous position to be in, and all Visionary need to do is put the diffuser in Trophy. But unfortunately for them, the diffuser was out of pocket, so Jimmy Buckets had to rotate around, nearly getting shot there by the swinging Mouse. But he will rotate around, and now a trophy plant is all but inevitable. And now once this plant is down, it is going to be extremely hard for Redux to retake this. So if they want to find some traction in this round, it is going to have to happen very soon. But it's not going to happen for Rogley. The shots delivered by the player on the Astro stairs. It is all up to Mouse with an SMG-11 to do the rest of the work. But Panic on the swing. The double kill is delivered, and Visionary will find round number 5 under their belts.
To build on the point I was making earlier, with Panic is alive, he gets kills. If we go back to round 1, he was the opening death, and that was probably the worst showing from Visionary other than the Cav Banana play when they were in round 3. And speaking of round 3, well, we're going to round 6, which means Kitchen is a viable bomb site for the defenders to go. But instead, they're going to be electing to go in the Aviator. And like we said in round 1, Panic has to be alive for this execute. He has to be the apex for the attackers. And I'd also like to see the attackers go for the traditional clear through the north, working their way on down, playing the windows, because their upside down window repel in the stars window is perfect. If you couple that over here in 90 or potentially in zombie window, excellent move for Visionary, but we'll have to see.
Well, they did it in round number 4, I believe that was, and it worked so well for them. I mean, they got the AVG attack that they needed to get, and instead of getting absolutely dusted on top of main, they were able to dust those Redux players on their own as well by catching them off guard by a little push in from that landing side. So I like what you said, Chief. I agree. To find that similar success, they really should go for your traditional north to south clear, because Redux did not seem to have an immediate counter for it on that previous round. But now Redux knows what to expect. They know generally where Visionary is going to approach from, and as such, they can prepare a little bit differently for that. They can pre-place either a utility or a defender ready to shut that down. And Trix will be trying to start things off strong once again, going for the spawn peek with the 2x scope, and Mouse will happily join the Rook in study, just hanging out here close to the doorway.
Redux Rising wants to play aggressive, and that could work out well for them, but I want to go back to a macro strategy that a lot of teams have forgot. It's with your thermite, placing them on the floor. So if a wall is fully electrified, you place your thermite charge on the wall, and it doesn't make a large hole, but it's going to make a hole that is at heat level that you could sometimes prone through depending on how close to the wall you put it. But more importantly, you can catch defenders off on rotations. If you're upside down repelled or traditional repelled on the study balcony, looking all the way to gun vault, that is a primary highway for most defenders. And if that is opened up at the feet level, defenders won't have the fluidity that they want. But Visionary has made another droning error, and they haven't confirmed Merry Trixmas still in study.
This study pressure, this very aggressive positioning from Redux is actually working well for them right now. They are terrified, or at least Visionary is terrified of pushing on through. Martyr cannot tempt this swing because you need your thermite alive, and without any support from your team, it's going to be Trix to do it actually, and the swing will find its target. Tomato has one in response, but wow, you've lost your thermite. That is a big pick early, and now Tomato's going to look for the response, but Trix is elusive and will not provide the trade. That is your only hard breacher gone. That is a huge problem for Visionary now, and Redux are looking good. Despite losing the mute, the thermite is a much better trade for that. But now you've lost your bandit. Stole on the flank was unsuccessful, with Panic delivering that kill as well. And like you said, Chief, Panic is of course still alive. Still a factor in this round, and a factor that Redux are going to desperately need to shut down if they want this round win.
Panic died in the first 3 rounds, and he hasn't died since then. He is starting to heat up, and the fireball tornado storm that is Visionary is finding its targets. Are they prepared for a push through 90? There seems to be a flank drone stowed away somewhere over here, and that's going to alert Visionary that they have to change their angles of attack if they want to find the kills and to be successful here in round 6. They've done a lot to put themselves in a great position, but they have to get the kill of Merry Trixmas over here in the gun vault. They have utility, they have flashbangs. It's going to be Zofia tasked with that endeavor. The newest player, Visionary, is now done. Panic is going to fall. Merry Trixmas is going nuts. He's attempting the ace, but put quickly into a body bag. 2-2 with 14 seconds left. Jimmy Buck is going to put the bomb down on the deck, but he is no longer able to do so as he's 6 feet under. Badger going for the clutch, sending the G8 down range, having it sing, having it go burr, but he falls in that process. Redux Rising saves the round in phenomenal fashion.
Well, the G8 went burr, but so did Redux, and the round fell into their pocket. Redux, that 4-2 split. It's coveted here on Villa, but it is generally considered expected for the most part, especially when you work your way down a T3 or T4. You generally expect this to roll in terms of that defensive side. That 4-2 split is no surprise. But when you go to the other side of things, when you go to your second split, it's all about the response from Visionary here. Of course, they're on defense now. You'd expect them to find some immediate success, especially now that the sides have switched, but that's going to be tough because Redux are looking overall pretty strong so far. They've had a good counter for almost everything that Visionary have attempted to bring to the table. Just in that last round, they denied entry from study heavily denied it by just putting the Rook, putting Trix in that position, and just pressuring every player who tried to come in from the study balk. That resulted in Thermite finding their early grave and resulted in the round shaking out in the favor of Redux. With the study walls remaining hard for the remainder of the round, there was very little that Visionary could do other than walk through the fatal funnels of those 3 key doorways, the game's doorway, and those 2 aviator doorways. And without much else, there was nothing that Visionary could do but slowly and surely fall away and die one at a time.
Something that we didn't highlight earlier, that Mira was allowed through the ban phase. She was in our first map of Oregon, and she'll be returning here in Villa. They're putting one of those black mirrors facing towards study. So it seems like Visionary understands, we like to push through study, so Redux Rising will as well. But I'd like to argue that a lot of attacking teams aren't going to use study as a true apex position, but as a way to potentially show a threat. That is just the ace up their sleeves. If you're a good card player, you want to have as many different types of cards in your pocket. If you're playing poker, you might want all aces, but maybe it's a different hand and maybe you want 3 kings. You need to have that level of flexibility with your defense, but as well as the attacks. We're gonna have to see how Visionary is able to read into that.
Well, right now, the Dokkaebi calls the logic bombs going out. The defensive positioning is going to be known sooner or later as the clear starts to go through. This vertical clear coming from the bottom is the focus, and it's Miracle who finds Panic. Now, Panic is already lost and cheap. If that means anything, that means that Visionary are going to have a tough time in the remainder of this round. But of course, it's defense. They can play time. All they have to do is sit back and wait for Redux to walk into their open arms. And that is exactly what Jimmy Buckets, Martyr, Tomato, and Badger are going to be looking to do, as Stoll is now pressuring on the top of main with Miracle. Tomato is attempting some pretty aggressive swings here with the Jackal tracker, is going to actually reveal his position, and the shots delivered by the Jackal himself. Miracle finds the headshot, the C7E doing what it does best. Only 3 defenders remain, and this Redux push is growing ever stronger.
The attackers haven't brought a hard breacher. Instead, they've elected to go for all fraggers, and it seems to have worked out well at the start of this round, but members of Visionary have not been fully slaughtered yet. The man advantage that Redux Rising worked so hard to achieve on the roam clear has now gone away because they aren't dealing with the minigames. The exact same problem that Visionary was dealing with on attack, well, Redux Rising is going to slip on those boots. We're going to need to see Redux Rising determine where the biggest threat is from and actively deal with it. They have determined it, they have clicked the heads, and now it is a 1v2. Jimmy Buckets, the SMG-11 specialist, stuck over in study. The mirror windows have now been popped, helping him hold this position, challenging both fronts. But he has a lot of time, and when you're a defender in a 1v2, time is not your asset.
Well, you're going to have to get something going here, because if this goes to a post-plant situation, it's going to get very disastrous for Jimmy Buckets very quickly. But right now, the diffuser is not down. It's actually going to be Trix who is down. Jimmy Buckets finds the kill, and all of a sudden, it's now Rogley who has the responsibility to make this one happen. All of a sudden, the tables have indeed turned. Rogley going to try to stick the diffuser here, but here comes Jimmy Buckets. And the mirror window facing the other direction, but Jimmy Buckets going to take the shots, but it's the G8 which will prevail. Rogley will take the fight and win it, then Redux will squeak out that round in an interesting fashion.
I have to be incredibly critical of the attackers of Redux Rising. They won the round, sure, but that was far too close. There was 45 seconds left on the clock and a 1v2. That is enough time to drone out the lone defender and push together as a team. That last part is so critical. Play with your man advantage. However, Redux Rising elected to go for 2 1v1s. The Zofia lost the first engagement, and micro positioning at the end of the day cost, well, Redux Rising almost that last kill. Somehow IQ was able to win that, but that surely should not have gone in their favor. That was a miracle of a round, and I guess Miracle plays for their team, so he's been praying a lot to his lucky stars, but that was a huge oversight by Redux Rising. They need to reevaluate how they're playing as a roster with a man advantage if they want to find success.
You make a stellar point. It's something that teams often, ignore the importance of post-plant positioning, or at least 1vx positioning, because when you have the advantage like that, often you feel that you have a free win under your belt at that point. If it's a 2v1 and the defender is out of the sight completely, is on the top of main stairs, you have won the round should be easy for you to win that round. You get your default plant, you cover your planter, and all of a sudden, it is impossible for an effective retake to actually happen. And this is something that teams, at least newer teams, can struggle with sometimes in terms of knowing where to position and how to position in a post plant or a 1vx situation, because it is still so important not to throw away those rounds that should be very easy for you to take, and very easy for you to take with ease, in fact. And so now, going to this tertiary bomb site, going to kitchen and dining, we're going to once again see how that positioning is going to work out for both of these rosters, but this is the first time that we're going to see Redux go for this kitchen attack, and the vertical play will be that first step that has to be accomplished. But Stoll, what a shot onto Panic. Hello, pushing on in the living room and just finding ahead early on. That is good progress and a great starting point for Redux.
We're going to see another walk-in closet extension by now Visionary, but instead they've elected to reinforce both of the walls side by side, both north walls. That is going to be a huge oversight when it comes to defending walk-in closet. Now, sometimes you have the option as defender to not defend walk-in closet. You can win engagements across the other side of the map. And this brilliant angle by Tomato Slug looking into Lamp has netted himself a down but not out. He overstints his welcome, and as he's going to be gunned down. The crazy thing about this setup, though, is it is a kitchen defense, not a traditional trophy defense. And Visionary has done a wonderful job of wasting time. They're going to waste more time in body counts as it's a 1v3, another G8 against the world, able to find one in a quick flick, but pistol in hand, forced to rotate away. The down banana player is going to be finished off by his teammate. A dip potato chip is going to be ill-advised as Rogley teabags and dies. What on earth? A terrible play. The BM costed his life and threw the round.
Well, it was a tough situation nonetheless, so maybe not a complete throw, but definitely an ill-advised dance moves on top of your opponent's body. So, you know, that TK really didn't mean much. It really just furthered a disastrous round for that attacking team. It was very, very well done from Visionary on that vertical hold. It was a surprising amount of aggression, I will say that. Normally, we will see teams play that a bit more passively. Once they are forced out by ample use of utility and player force upstairs, they will fall off those angles and retreat back to site, jumping down the atrium. That's not at all what we saw from Visionary. They stuck hard and stalwart over in that vertical extension. They did not let themselves be pushed out, and when the cards fell as they did, it was Visionary who ended up on top.
We're gonna go back to planes and games. The last time we were here, Redux Rising was able to win it based off their initial round aggression, getting the opening kills on the roam clear. But this round was incredibly close. Visionary is very capable of winning this, and they're also going to be changing up their macro strategy. The last time we're here, we saw the mirror being played looking all the way towards study. But Visionary has learned that Redux Rising isn't going to elect to take study until the last few dying seconds of the round. Instead, they're going to be clearing from the north. So that's going to prompt Visionary to bring out one of the older strategies that is going to be Mute Mozzie, Information Denial Simulator in full effect. The whole goal of this strategy is to delay as much time as possible, but more importantly, snipe away the precious drone utility.
Yeah, that old meta, the wombo combo of the Mute and the Mozzie is simply just lethal for any attacking drones, and it can make it very hard to force out any hard-stuck roamers. Combine that with a Maestro. Gain some information of your own. Now that we have the Valk ban, of course, that's the Maestro is the strategic play there, but you get the information of your own, and you get a good amount of intel to work with and a good amount of intel denial. It appears the vault wall being open has caught Mouse off guard. He's going to send those Habana pellets flying straight into an opening gap, but it's Jimmy Buckets. Hello. He'll swing the angle. The M590 will deliver the Habana to their early grave. That is the hard breacher. That is the lone hard breacher already gone.
It seems like Redux Rising is finding themselves in why on earth was he there scenarios where he just ends up dying to the most perplexing things possible. That was the macro strategy that Visionary set up, and opening over in the gun vault has prompted the Alda to go fishing for an aggressive play. Now it's Redux Rising's turn to make mistakes on their drone clear. They're not re-establishing drones, and they're dying as a result of it. The 90 set drone is the oldest drone on Villa. if at minimum you put a drone there to catch the movements and the fluidity of the defense. But since Redux Rising hasn't done that, it's just going to allow the Alda of Martyr to constantly get aggressive and swing for the fence.
Well, it's Panic who swung for the fences on that peak and got absolutely obliterated for that mistake. And so now only 2 defenders remain as Martyr is the next to fall. Only one as Miracle solidifies the double kill. It's Jimmy Buckets. Oh, the flick with the SMG-11 finds one. Trix is the next to fall, but 2 attackers remain. And this is the identical situation to 2 rounds ago. It is a 2v1 with Jimmy Buckets, the lone mute, left to do it, and this time Redux are playing it a lot better. They've got the diffuser down straight away, and Rogley delivers the headshot. Jimmy Buckets gone, and the round in the hands of Redux. That time they made the response that they needed. They didn't make those mistakes in the closing seconds, so that is another Planes and Games attack under their belt.
Stoll may have just said the most savage thing in all his chat. Jimmy Crickets. Yikes. And well, Jimmy Buckets was in a good position to save his team. He did everything right. He was prepared for the nitrocell. He sent the nitrocell downrange, and it hit the soft wall. You have to pre-set up your rounds to deny the, well, default plans, whether or not they're planning maps, whether or not they're planning bomb chassis or the gun vault door. If your strategy is to have the SMG-11 player with the nitrocell over in U-bar, you know that he's going to have to send his nitrocell down range. So if he isn't setting up those holes for nitrocell, well, you're going to find yourself in that exact same position. Your nitrocell against the wall and you scrambling to save the round. And I also have to give props to Redux Rising. The last time they were in a 1vx scenario, they played it very poorly. They're still able to win the round, but off a miracle miss by the shotgun. But today, they didn't need the miracle miss. I guess they did need the miracle miss because the nitrocell mixed. So, Planes and Games, not working out for Visionary.
Yeah, that's not the site that Visionary have found the most success on. In fact, they've only found 1 round successful on their defense, and that was a death to frags, as we saw there, but also on that tertiary bomb site or secondary bomb site, as they elected to avoid trophy and statuary. The vertical hold was so key in round number 8 and is going to be so important again, but this time it's not the top-down hold that matters, it's the extension on the top floor, because a south to north clear is all but inevitable for Redux and their approach to this particular site, so it's all about the application of utility and manpower on this study side. How many players do you put roaming over in study, and at least in aviator and games, and how long do you delay this push that Redux are going to try to get going?
Taking control of study is going to be the first part of the checklist for Redux Rising. And look at the scoreline now. It's a 6-3. If Redux Rising wins this next round, they will tie the score that Visionary put on them on Oregon. And this map has been a lot more traditional. Redux Rising has been playing as a cohesive team. They've been breaking down minigames. Jimmy Buckets is going to be burned to death nearly by that minigame, but he likes to push windows with his shotguns, able to get one, but he gets down by the nade, but Panic off screen, able to get another headshot. Great showing by Visionary as they understand where to train their barrels and how to help their players for as long as possible. But it's going to be almost in vain as Rogley just sends himself on through, unprepared to get shot down from the grapes.
Well, that push from study side that we forecasted actually never came into fruition. It was simply just a master send. They realized there was some utility over there. Redux did not want to deal with it, so a direct master take is what came down. But it did not work so far. At least it's not working as of this moment, as the Pokeball will take down Stoll. Oh no, the Ash now down but not out. Here comes the swing from the Jaeger Tomato. Ill-advised swing will find the grave, but the refrag is there. Major finds it, the down is confirmed, and Visionary will get round number 10. The full send in Master. Visionary shut that one down right away.
That was another linear take by the attacking team of Redux Rising. Instead of doing what Visionary was doing, just pushing all the way from the study balcony to the bomb site, we saw the attackers of Redux Rising elect to do a pure master bedroom take, but both of those strategies have the exact same problems. You're far too linear, you have no crossfire, and you're putting 5 attackers looking in the exact same position. Now, that can be very strong when you're dealing with one particular minigame, the walk-in closet. All you do is throw your entire utility and the kitchen sink at him, and you should be able to kill him for free. But you also have to remember your mechanical skill. Learn to quick peek the angle if you're cooking a frag grenade, because if you don't, there might be a shotgun there to say hello.
Well, they tried the linear approach, like you mentioned, Chief, and it was very similar to what we saw from Visionary on some of their more unsuccessful attacks, especially their initial attack on planes and games. The very linear take from the study side, it had no business in this particular evening, and it was shut down by Redux just in the way that Visionary just shut down that master push. At some point, you've got to look at how that attack is unfolding and probably try to stop the bleeding the best you can. If you lose a player early on to that push and realize there is ample utility in closet, there is a shotgun player in closet, and there are ample players just waiting for the master push to actually come through, you have to take a step back, realize that is not the best approach, and find a way to quickly and immediately make a choice and make a pivot in that round. And that's not what we saw from Redux, and that is no wonder why the round played out in the way that it did. But now we're going back to Kitchen and Dining. Visionary found success the last time they were here, and so now Redux are once again going to have to change things up a bit. Sure, it's match point, and they're about to take this one home, but they still need to fight a couple more rounds. It's not all over yet for Visionary, who look like they are trying to put up a fight here.
This is the second round we've seen from Redux Rising where they're not bringing a traditional hard breacher. They're bringing an operator that has the pocket thermite charge, and the pseudo hard breacher of Capital might actually work out well because you don't need to open a lot of things downstairs in the kitchen bomb site. You really need to open up the east main wall. And once you have that, that is an avenue to push into Tetris as well as in a jukebox. But beyond that, you don't really need to do much. The most important thing the attackers have to do is clear out the top floor. And they're going to start that off with a perfect opportunity. They found the kill on one, but they haven't drawn out Jaeger. It won't matter as Skull is quick to the trigger, gets himself a headshot as a round starts to pop off.
Well, Badger had the response, but still 4 attackers remain, and they are looking like this push from this south side is going to be quite successful so far. Badger has been forced all the way back into Astro and is just taking some spray and pray shots through that wall there, and there's another defender caught out there over in Bathroom, and here comes Miracle sneaking on into the site, looking for the player here in Master. They know one's there. That's Jimmy Buckets, who is ready for this swing, but it's Badger who finds one first. The ill-advised push from Miracle will find its death, and Stoll found one, but is it too little too late? PHROGCHAMP's all the way up into this site, looks for the player in the closet, finds the headshot. That's one, and now Martyr is all that remains. The last hope for Visionary, if they want to get into the playoffs, they need Martyr to find a nice double kill here or some way to deny this plant and clutch it up. With the vertical control surrendered, Martyr is faced back into a corner and is in a very dangerous position.
As you're highlighting, there's so much more on the line than just this round, round 11. This could be what propels Visionary into the postseason because their opponent right above them, Emergence, is only a few points away. And this is the last Playday for Visionary, unlike their opponents of Emergence. So these rounds are incredibly important. Father Time will end up dictating how this pans out. Martyr has to play this perfectly. He has to be knowledgeable, utilizing his preset drones throughout the map. But Redux Rising doesn't know he's flanking, but the barbed wire is going to give away Martyr's life. Redux Rising destroys the chances of Visionary in the postseason, but Redux Rising will confirm theirs. A great showing in Week 10 by both of these rosters, but Visionary needed to win both of these maps, not just one.
Unfortunately for Visionary, it didn't all go their way. Map 1 did, but Map 2 was not the same. Redux, they found their groove. Despite some early difficulties on Oregon and some difficulties on Villa, it was that groove that really enabled them to just keep on the pressure, their foot firmly on the throat of Visionary, and they had no response to that aggression from Redux. And it went back and forth. It really did. Visionary had some moments where it looked like they were going to shine, where it was all clicking. But for the most part, Redux, it was a lot better for them. And a tie is what you end up with.
Yeah, we're talking about map number 1, the adaptability of Redux Rising and reading into the strategy of Visionary. Sure, they weren't able to win map number 1, but those skills and those assets can be played at any map and any round you play. It even doesn't matter if you're playing in comp. You can utilize that in your life skills as well. If you're able to read into something and adapt to it, you're going to excel at everything you do. I think the break, that 5-10 minute break between map number 1 and 2, was enough for Redux Rising to talk amongst themselves and say, you know what, we're doing a lot of things wrong. We're not playing together as a team. We're not swinging together as a team. If we start to play as a cohesive 5 stack and basically meld together as one unit, there's nothing Visionary can do, because Visionary is playing as individuals and just clicking heads.
Well, soon we're going to take a look at our statistics because we're still making those happen from that match. But, you know, in terms of what we've talked about before from the statistics, you know, we've talked about Panic and how much of a vital player for Visionary Panics can be. And we've talked about Tricks on the side of Redux Rising and how both of these players have really been going in this head-to-head battle with their entry frags and with that early pressure. And I think Tricks outshined Panics here. Definitely, we're going to see it exactly how it panned out in the statistics in just a moment. But in terms of what we saw from the casting point of view, Tricks had a couple more flashy plays, a couple of more key moments. I'm thinking of that push on Study Balk, removing that Thermite from play, the Soul Hard Breacher. That was big. And Panic, while there were some clutches and some kills delivered, they just weren't as impactful and they weren't as crucial moments as Tricks made their presence felt.
But also, Jimmy Buckets on the side of Visionary, if his teammates were dead, he was calm, cool, and collected. He would put himself in the most unique micro positioning places, but he would still be able to win his ones. Why? Because Redux Rising was skipping steps. They're pushing far too quickly. And to have a player be that chill and with that level of trigger discipline is very rare. You even see it in professional play, where some individuals, sometimes these young 18-year-olds, they see ahead, they want to click the head. But what makes a true master is when you see ahead, your brain process whether or not it's best to actually pull the trigger, because you don't, if there's more attackers walking on by you and you can line them all up.
Well, now we get a chance to take a look at our statistics and see exactly how it played out, and I think the ratings do it for you pretty cleanly. We see Roguely a 1.4, Tricks nearly a 1.4, both putting on a show. And as I talked about Panic was unable to really find their full groove. We see the entry, it all going against Panic, 1 in 5 rather than the 5 in 1 or something in that vein that we've been accustomed to seeing Panic do. That is definitely something that made it a lot harder for Visionary to find their usual success on both sides of the coin. You know, Tricky found 2 of those entry picks, but it wasn't enough to make up for the ground that Panic was actually losing to a lot of those entry frags. It was Panic and Martyr who actually died to the majority of those first picks in between both of these teams. And now that is definitely a detriment, especially when you're trying to fight against a team who on paper may be better than you and on paper may outshine you. And to do so, losing those players very early on as those early picks is not the way you want to start each round, Chief.
I have never seen a team have so many darn entry kills. I mean, that's incredibly impressive. And I have to highlight Tomato. He was struggling in this series, but in map number 1, he was an asset. He was droning in his entries, but on every single Visionary attack, we never saw drones basically clearing out the entire map, and more importantly, primary and secondary entries following up that drone. So that's common areas that attackers fumble on, not playing their drones appropriately.
Well, now we're getting a chance to take a look at our stats from both of these maps combined, the full match stats. And the thing that is standing out to me right now is the lack of plants. I'm looking at 3 total diffuser plants. Now, if that is correct, that is an appallingly low amount of plants. All of these rounds shaking out simply by frags.
And if we take the emergent style of play, their whole macro goal is to plant the bomb. Sure, you have Goria available to you who'll just slaughter everything on the receiving end of his reticle, but that isn't their strategy. Their strategy is to put the bomb down and then force the defenders to get aggressive. Here today, though, it seemed like both these teams, their macro strategy was not to put the bomb down. Their macro strategy was just to go to bazooka in the lobby. You can make up words, honestly, because that's what this game was. It was just made up strategies to just click foreheads.
And Chief, normally I don't mind when you see a team decide to pursue the frags in a particular situation over the plant, because sometimes, a good amount of the time, it is actually advisable to search for frags in a particular situation. But the rest of the time, this is of course an objective-based game. You've got to get that diffuser on the ground, because as an attacking team, it changes up everything. It makes you the defender. It puts you in an overwhelmingly advantageous position, even with a man advantage, because you can watch as the defenders will walk through some fatal funnels of their own and fall victim to your long angles that you hold in a post plant. So getting to that post plant is so valuable, and something that neither of these teams capitalized on here tonight.
And Tachanka is currently an operator that you cannot play in competitive play, but if we build upon that a little bit more, and we see these linear executes by these attacking teams, if you're bringing a smoke, that's a great way of chipping away damage and punishing linear takes. But if you add, well, the man with the LMG shotgun thing, Mr. Tachanka, he can shut down even more of those techs. He sends his fire grenades down range, and well, you're going to be standing there with your toes on fire and be like, why am I here? So we're going to have to see more of these attacking teams be prepared for that and learn that lesson now, because it's going to hurt them in the future.
Well, the future is what we are going to have to wait for here. We're going to be sending it to a quick break, and when we return, we might get a quick interview, but at the very least, we are going to have another fantastic matchup for you. We've got Emergence versus Down to Earth, an unbelievable matchup to end the regular season. We've got Sticula and CDAPS to lead us on through it. But until then, we will be right back.